All right, good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining our January onX Fish 101 Masterclass. We're super happy to have you here. We'll get going in just a minute or two. We'll give everybody some time just to get logged in and get settled in. So while we're waiting, just a little bit of housekeeping. Your audio and video are turned off, so we can't see or hear you. No worries if you've got noise in the background or anything like that. We do have, an opportunity to ask questions during this class tonight. So there's a Q&A feature built within Zoom. That's really the best way to send those questions to us. There's a chat function as well. That's not as good of a spot to put questions. They just tend to get lost in there. It's not really built for a question and answer format. So chat's great if you just want to let us know who you are, where you're tuning in from. Drop any questions you have in that Q&A box. We do have a member of our customer support team who's helping out kind of in the background, answering some of those questions. We'll also save some of them to answer live at the end of the class. This class is being recorded, so it'll be uploaded to YouTube tomorrow, and we will send everybody an email with the link to that YouTube video. So if you want to send it to a friend, or if you have to drop off early, need to, catch up on what you missed, or you just want to go back and rewatch it or something like that. So it is being recorded. And then we are doing a giveaway at the end of this class. We're giving away some onX Fish hats towards the end. So we'll post that giveaway link towards the end of the class. So you do have to be present to get entered for that. And then I will pull all those winners tomorrow and get your hats mailed out to you. So with that, we'll kind of get into it. My name's Jack Headland. I will be not talking here very soon because I will be turning it over to our fish extraordinaire, Joel, who's over in Minnesota. What's going on, Joel?
Hey, how's everybody doing? Glad to be here.
Take a sip of water so I don't lose my voice. So the agenda for tonight, we're going to go over kind of the nuts and bolts of the onX Fish app. This is a 101 class, so we're not going to necessarily cover every single feature within the app. There's a lot of stuff in here. Before we even get into everything, I'm going to tell everybody the best way to learn this app, besides attending a class like this, is to spend some time in it. Play around with the app, push all the buttons. There's nothing you can break. I sometimes talk with folks and they have a little bit of trepidation, like, I don't want to turn on the wrong thing, or there's nothing you can turn on that can't be turned off, and vice versa. So the more time you spend in the app, the more proficient you're going to be with it, the more familiar it's going to become. So what are we talking about? We're going to cover the different features of the app, and really the bread and butter is our fishing spots and fisheries data. That's kind of the power behind the app. Joel will take care of that information. And then I will touch on some of the offline maps, your different mapping tools like waypoints and lines. We'll go over the different base maps and some of the layers available to you, how to perform a search. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we'll do that Q&A and giveaway towards the end of the class. So with that, if Joel is ready, I'm going to stop sharing and I will kick it over to you.
All right, that sounds great. Hey, thanks so much, Jack. I'm going to share my screen so everybody can see what I'm up to. All right, so for those of you joining us at home, there's two ways to connect to the app. The first is through the app itself, if you have an Apple operating system on your phone. And the second way is to do it through Web Map, and I'll be joining you through the Web Map. And if you're not familiar on how to get to it from web, if you're an Android user, if you want to use it from a tablet or a desktop, all you do is go to www.onxmaps.com/fish. And literally, that's the web page that you can launch everything from. So if you're joining us from that direction, again, onxmaps.com/fish will get you there. And you're given a lot of information about the app itself. So spend some time looking and learning. There's a blog which has lots of different great articles, ways to connect with the app and use it in a better way, as well as features. And from there, you can launch in at any point, try for free for Minnesota, try for free in Wisconsin. I'm already logged in. I'm from Minnesota, and I'm going to be giving you guys some Minnesota examples. So first thing we want to talk about in the app, like Jack said, is our fishing spots function. But there's a lot of ways to skin that cat. First and foremost is the easy way. It's this simple little button up here, or lower left if you're talking about it in the app, upper left if you're talking about it on the web map like I am. It says fishing spots. You click on it, and for whatever your zoom range or area is, you'll get lots of different suggestions based on different species and different qualities of those fish that you may be interested in. So first and foremost, lakes with abundant walleye in this area are listed. And as I mouse over these lakes, you can see them lighting up on the map. And you can also see little cards on some of these maps, like Farm Island Lake, where there's a trophy card, a special regulations call out. All those little badges signify different things within our app. If I look down further, now we're talking about bluegills, abundant walleyes, trophy walleyes. As I scroll down, it suggests a lot of different lakes and real quick, precise, fast hitter information that's listed: max depth, size, last year it was surveyed. All that lives within this simple fishing spots. Again, I'll click on it one more time. For me in the web version, it's upper left. If you're looking on your app, it's lower left. So we can dive in from there. If you see Farm Island Lake and you want to click into it, learn a little bit more about it, you can get this zoom in. It takes you right to where you're going to go, and it gets you into that fisheries information that's so valuable. And we're going to dive into the fisheries information in a little bit, but I just want to back out to all those water bodies. And other fishing spots are shown down at the bottom that just list other specific lakes in the area that you may be interested in. So I'm going to zoom back out, reset us, click on fishing spots. You'll also see these filters listed on top, and that's where a lot of the power in the app lives. That's how we filter through so much of the fisheries data. But before I show you that, we're going to dive back into Farm Island Lake. Okay. So anytime you're at the lake level or have selected a lake, by clicking on it in the center of that lake, you'll see the outline of the lake highlighted. You're going to be brought to the individual information for that lake page. So for Farm Island Lake, we've got max depth listed, size and acreage, average water clarity, and all of the top species listed. And you'll notice that for Farm Island, it's a special regulations lake. And if we scroll down to the bottom of the page, click see more, you can see that all walleyes from 16 to 19 inches must be immediately released in Farm Island Lake. That's a really nice feature. There's really no reason these days not to know your special regulations, even though Minnesota does have a ton of lake-specific regs, just like Wisconsin. The app calls all that out and is right at your fingertips. So again, back to the species data. We see all the top species, but we can also see all of the species in the lake with this button here. So again, I'll show you that. Top species are listed in terms of interest by most anglers. And if you click see all species, you'll get a hint at every fish that has been measured and recorded in the lake. And something that's really important to note for the onX Fish app, this is not crowdsourced data. Again, I repeat, this is not from Joe Blow in middle of Wisconsin or Minnesota saying that there's a smallmouth bass in this lake or that there's walleye in this lake. This is data that's captured by the DNR, by the state's Department of Natural Resources. It's recorded, copied down by professional wildlife managers, fisheries biologists, and stored in databases. And if you click on an individual species, you can see for bluegill, there's a keeper potential badge. More on that later. You'll get a graphical representation of the size class distribution of bluegills in the lake. One thing that's also important to notice, as you mouse over any of those ranges, you can see the number of fish in that size range that was sampled. So, for example, on my screen, you can see 8-inch bluegills in that 8 to 9-inch range. There were 14 of 135 fish surveyed there, and 9 to 10-inch fish, 5 out of 135 fish were sampled there in that size range. So pretty good looking bluegill lake. But what's really cool is I can also scroll back and see other years in which these data were captured. So you can scroll back through other years of survey. And for lakes that are regularly surveyed, you actually have a ton of data to put together a plan. As you scroll down for that individual species, there's more on that keeper potential that we were talking about. It says a significant portion of the bluegill population in this lake were considered within the keeper range. These are fish that are of a size that are popular to clean and catch, but are not considered trophy fish. So if you're looking for a lake that may not have wall hangers, but has a reasonable size of keepers or eater size fish, it's going to call it out to you in a badge on that specific lake. All right. Now, catch per unit effort. This is a really powerful piece right here. For every single lake that there were fisheries data recorded, you can see catch per unit effort. What that means is with the trap net survey, as it's indicated, they caught a low amount of catch per unit effort, or number of days or number of trap nets set out when compared against other lakes that are similar in size, shape, a number of other lake characteristics. So again, this is the comparison to other lakes in its class. And while it might have a low catch per unit effort, meaning they didn't sample as many fish as they might have in other lakes that are similar, you can see the quality of those fish was quite high when we look up at the graphical representation. So that's pretty cool. You can also see that in 2016, they sampled a true 10-inch bluegill, which is really hard to achieve anywhere in the Midwest. I don't care where you're fishing. So that's also interesting to see. For every lake, you can see this level of detail called out in every single point, but not just for bluegills. And that's the interesting part. We can look at it for other species too, like walleyes. And walleyes are really great because of their length and eventual size. At times, with enough surveys like a Mille Lacs, you can see certain year classes moving through the system with these multiple dates of data, which may be a part of your game plan. And as you can see for walleyes, the catch per unit effort is actually above average for other lakes in its class. And this was during the 2023 survey year using gill nets. No trophy walleyes sampled in any of those year classes. So this might be a lake where, hey, they're abundant. You can catch a good number of walleyes. There is a slot like we saw in the special regulations that were called out here down at the bottom. Again, right here in the regulations section. But we know that for walleyes, it's a very popular lake and a place to head out to. All right. So that was a lot of information I threw at you all at once. I'm going to really quick just give you another breakdown of how I got there. So remember, I started in fishing spots. Farm Island was recommended as an abundant walleye lake. I clicked on Farm Island Lake in the fishing spots card, and it took me to a number of the top species that were listed there, which is really cool. But if I wanted to see all the species in the lake, I would just scroll down a little bit. See this little tab that says see all species? Click on it, and then all of the species in the lake would be highlighted. All right. So that's just a quick demo on Farm Island Lake. And like I promised, one of the more powerful pieces of the fisheries data isn't just that we have the data here, isn't just that you can see all of the year classes and all the size distribution. It isn't just because you can see multiple years of data, unlike you can anywhere else, but it's because you have the ability to filter based on user specs. What do I mean by filter? Well, if we click off this fishing spots card, you'll see that a part of the fishing spots card stayed with us up here. It says all species and access. When I click on fishing spots, I see it again, all species and access. Those three buttons are going to help us get into a filter situation that'll help us find what we're looking for. I'll click on all to start. So under all, again, I'll do it one more time. Be listed at the top there for you. I click on all. I've got all of the filters that are available in onX Fish to use. And there's a lot to look at, but it's actually very simple. Basically, you start with your fish species of choice. Let's say crappies. And maybe you were interested in crappies, maybe where we could keep them, or maybe just high abundance. We're looking to just catch a bunch of crappies. We don't really care that they're trophies. Maybe we're just interested in catching a meal of them. And hey, I want to bend the rod and look for lakes where they're relatively abundant. Once I click that button, you'll see a number of lakes in the area showed up. The more I zoom out and the more I research in that area, it pops up other lakes that satisfy that. We're looking for these little red waypoints. Anywhere that a little red dot shows up, and I'll just zoom in on one. Anywhere a red dot shows up, that means that it satisfies what my filter settings were. Again, I'm going to back out one more time and show you the filter. I clicked on all. I selected crappies. I selected high abundance lakes with keeper potential. I'm just going to keep it that simple at first. We're not going to go any further into it. And it took me to this lake amongst other lakes, Crooked, and I get to go ahead and check out Crooked. It highlights the filtered species that I selected. It has a very high abundance of crappies with keeper potential. So I click on Crooked, and you can see there's a ton of fish within that survey range that are kind of that 8 to 10 inch mark. And as far as the catch per unit effort, they're extremely high in abundance compared to other lakes in this class. So this lake is a great starting point to find numbers of crappies and crappies in that keeper potential range. Okay, we see that there's no special regs there, so you don't have to worry about that part of it from a regulation standpoint. But if we go back to that filter card, we can dive in a little deeper. Let's say this was summertime, and maybe we're only interested in way back lakes that don't actually have a paved access. We can look for remote lakes that only have carrying accesses, or we can select paved, gravel, natural types. You have the choice. You can also select accesses only with restrooms. I hear that being a popular one. And so if you want to filter based on those specifics, you can do that too. Maybe it's a windy day and you know that you're not going to want to be on one of those great big lakes. You can filter for smaller lake options, and you can see certain ones are taken away. Crooked Lake is not part of the picture anymore, but we can click on Hanks Lake, and we can see that again for our specific filter for crappies in the keeper and abundance range, we found what might even be a better lake. High abundance, above average CPUE, and fish approaching 13 inches. So that seems like a winner to me, especially if it's a windy day in the summer. We want to stay out of that wind. So I'm introducing for one species just a bit of the potential of power of this app in helping you find new lakes. And really, what we aim to do is in 10 minutes give you 10 years of information. If you've never been to these places, you're vacationing in the area, or you're looking just to find new places to fish near home, this is an opportunity to filter on a number of species. You can do multiple species at once. You can search for trophy class fish. Maybe we're only interested in walleye lakes that have trophies in them. So we go ahead and click that, select done, and we see that our favorites, both Hanks Lake, if we click on it, let's look at the walleye situation. Okay, right away I can see that it's a low abundance lake, but there's some great big fish in it. And in the 2023 survey year, they sampled a 30-inch fish in it. So pretty wild. Looks like because of the low abundance, very low CPUE, it's a lake you might go to and completely strike out on, but it might be a lake that you put a 28-inch plus walleye in the boat or on the ice. So that's a big portion of what this app is understanding how to bounce between the fishing spots and then utilize the filters within the app. All right, I'm going to take a little bit of a breather right here. And Jack, I don't know if there are any specific questions or if we're putting that to the end or other parts of both fishing spots or fisheries data we'd like to cover a little bit more.
Yeah, one of the common questions, and one I should have just talked about at the beginning, quite a few Android users asking us, hey, I'm not seeing this available to me.
Right.
At the present moment, onX Fish is not available for the Android platform. It's on iOS and the web map that Joel is demonstrating there. Definitely something we plan on, working, or we are working on and plan on having in the future. Don't have a timeline for you or a firm date. So apologies, Android users. We should have made that more clear at the beginning. But as you can see, the web map is still a really powerful tool for your planning purposes and for, checking out new lakes and new spots to go. So While you're waiting for the Android version to be released, do definitely check out the web map here.
And what I will tell you about the Android version, I'm actually an Android user myself. And on the web map version for Android, I can use it on my cell phone. It has been optimized even further from previous releases. So if you tried the mobile version, the web map version on an Android phone, and you didn't have a great experience, it will be improved. It's not as optimized as the Apple app version, but like Jack said, that's something we're working on actively and are looking to provide a solution for all anglers.
There's one more quick one here I just saw came in from Al. He was talking about trout streams. So Al, what I would recommend for trout streams is you actually check out kind of our sister app, which is called Trout Routes. They're actually a little bit older. They've been around a little bit longer than onX Fish. They're in the family now. So Trout Routes, if you are a stream angler, trout streams, that's the go-to. They've got, a lot of the same type of information you see in onX Fish here, but geared more towards moving water, trout anglers, things like that. So good question.
One more thing I should clarify too, that as you're using the filters, it is based on your zoom area. So if you're executing filters and you're not seeing little red dots showing up, it might be because in your tight zoomed in window, there are no lakes that are satisfying the search. So give it a chance, zoom out, click search this area, and allow the map to populate with your filter selections. Anything else, Jack? Otherwise, I think we're ready to move to the next topic.
No, I think we'll save some of the questions for later on and we can
Perfect.
move on. Would you like me to go into some of the offline maps and that kind of stuff?
I think we're at a good point for that.
Awesome. Let me pull it up on my phone here. If Zoom will behave with me. You might have to stop sharing on your end. Well, maybe it'll let me kick you out. There we are.
Great.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm on an iPhone here. We mentioned before, we're only iOS for the present moment, but what we're going to talk about now is using some of the different map tools. And if you've used any of the other onX kind of family of apps, Hunt, Off-Road, Backcountry, this will be very familiar to you. It works exactly the same as it does on those platforms. But for those that are brand new, I'm going to talk about offline maps first. So this is how you can use the onX Fish app when you don't have good service. And let's be honest, a lot of times when we're fishing in Minnesota, Wisconsin, wherever, there's not great cell phone service there, but you still want to be able to navigate. You still want to be able to see where you are, where you've been. So I'm looking at the city of Grand Rapids. I lived there once upon a time, got to do a little bit of fishing. Let's say I want to head out fishing and I'm not going to have great cell phone service, so I need to save an offline map. Along the bottom of my screen, next to where it says fishing spots, there's a button that says offline maps. I'm going to tap on that. It's going to bring up this menu. First thing I'm going to do is tap this green new map button. Now that is going to change my map screen a little bit. It's going to put a green box with a portion of the map inside of it. So I can still, I'm just using one finger right now on my screen. I'm moving the map around. I can zoom out, but I can only zoom out so far because these maps are kind of bound by size. Your mileage, your length and width here may vary slightly from mine. It all depends a little bit on how big your phone is. So if you're not seeing 26.48 across the top, don't worry. It has to do with phone screen size and dimensions and things like that. You have a couple different options for choosing your map detail level as well. So first I'm just going to put Grand Rapids right in the center, and medium is going to be the detail level chosen by default. If I want really crisp imagery, I'm going to go to high detail level. Now you can see that shrank my map. Now I can still zoom in here a little bit. and it's a much smaller map. Now, let's say I was going to go fish Pokegama. I can get almost the whole lake in a high detail map. If I know that's where I'm going, I'm not going anywhere else on this trip, I can hit the save button and it will save me this map. So I'm just going to name it. I recommend naming all your maps if you can. That way, for future reference, you know where you have them saved. Click done and hit save. Now this green box will show on my map to let me know I have a map saved there. And then whatever is within that box will be visible to me when I don't have cell phone service. I'm still able to see my location. You know, I'm not physically there now, of course, but if I were, you'd see my location dot on the map. I can mark waypoints. I can track myself. I can do basically all the things that I do online, I can do when I'm offline now. Now, let's say, man, maybe we try fishing there in the morning, but the fishing's not good and we're going to go somewhere else in the afternoon, but I don't know where. You can save a bigger map and cover a much larger area. Maybe you're taking a family vacation and you say, man, we want to try to fish a whole bunch of new lakes. That's kind of the fun part of onX Fish, is it shows you a lot of your different options that you can explore new areas. I might save a medium detail map here and save a much bigger area. So I'm just going to name this one Grand Rapids and hit save. And that's going to start downloading that one. And you can have maps within maps like I have here. You can have maps saved next to each other. So if I want to, I could save another map and put it right next to that Grand Rapids map I just saved and kind of quilt together a bigger area. Maybe not, you might not use that all the time. That's something in our other apps people do quite often. Fishing, you might be more bound to a certain area, a certain chain of lakes. But if you're going to go up to the boundary waters, for example, and you're going to be covering some ground, you might need to save multiple maps. So that might be something that's useful to you. I'm going to back out of this and go to my list of maps here. So I have 3 offline maps saved on my account right now. The Pokegama and Grand Rapids maps that I just saved, as well as one titled BWCA in the Boundary Waters. If I want to go to that map, I'm just going to tap on the name BWCA and it brings me up there. That's a map that I had previously saved. You can save as many maps as you want onto your device. The only limit is your phone's storage. We don't limit you to 10 maps or 20 maps. It's just how many gigabytes of storage, do you have on your phone? You'll notice something new about this BWCA map. It says update available there instead of how many megs it's taking up. What that means is some of this map data has changed. Maybe there's new imagery, maybe there's new property ownership, bordering some of the lakes or something like that. If you want, you can just tap on that green circle and that will start updating that map for you with that new information. If your map says update available, don't think that it's unusable. We sometimes hear that from customers of, oh, I was heading out, but it said update available. I had to pull over and find Wi-Fi so that I could update my map so I could use it. They're still usable. When it says update available, it just means something is maybe a little bit out of date. Probably not catastrophic, probably not gonna, alter your trip or anything like that. I recommend do those updates when you can, when you think about it. You don't have to do it every day. You don't have to do it every week. I do it when I'm sitting at my desk. I'll just pull it up and update my maps so that they're fresh for me there. And that's pretty much it as far as offline maps go. You can save as many as you want. Like I said, I can tell where I have them saved by these green boxes on my map. If I would want to offload a map, for example, that's one thing I should mention. Let's say, all right, this Pokegama map, let's say I do a trip up there once a year and never go back. Great. I don't need that map taking up space on my phone the whole time. So I can tap those ellipses on the right-hand side and tap remove from device. Now you see that map has red and white check marks or red and white stripes around it. That means the outline is still saved, but the actual map data has been removed so that 312 megabytes is not taking up space on my phone. If you've got a ton of storage space, this probably doesn't matter. If you're kind of always towing that line and your phone gives you that warning that you're running out of space, you might need to offload some maps. The nice part of this is, I use that example. Let's say we take a 4th of July trip up there every year, and that's the only time I use it. So it's January right now. I don't need this map. It gets to be the 4th of July. I tap the download button. That's that down arrow, and it'll start downloading it for me again. So that's a little trick there too, to save some space on your phone if you'd like. All right, let's zoom in a little bit and let's talk about some of our map tools. The most commonly used tool for most people is going to be a waypoint. Now, there's a couple different ways to mark a waypoint within the app. If you want to mark where you are currently, you would use the Mark My Location button. Now, unfortunately, I'm at our headquarters in Missoula, Montana, so I'm not really able to demo that because onX Fish is not in Montana at this point. But if you tap Mark My Location, it's going to put a dot where you are. So I was home in central Minnesota where I grew up over Christmas and went ice fishing with a buddy. We were out in his wheelhouse, and I just hit Mark My Location so that I had a spot to mark where his fish house was out on the lake. Pretty simple there. So I would do that, if you want to mark where the landing is, if you're not driving out, right? If you're parking and walking, mark where the landing is so you can find it quick and easy. Mark where you're catching fish, mark where your, fishing rod fell down the hole and you need to come find it in the spring when the ice melts. The other way to mark a waypoint, well, I should say there's a couple ways. I'm going to zoom in. I'm just going to pick a random spot. And I tapped the add waypoint button. That's going to put a waypoint in the center of your screen. Maybe that's not where I want it, but I'm still in edit mode here. You see this little card down below? I'm just tapping on my screen right now. Wherever I tap, that's where that waypoint goes. So let's say that's where I want it. That looks like a good spot. Like your offline maps, I always recommend naming your waypoints. I said this was a good spot. I'm going to name it good spot. Name your waypoints. Using waypoints is all about being more efficient. If you mark waypoints and you don't change the name, you don't change the icon, you don't change the color, once you start amassing dozens, hundreds, thousands of waypoints, you're going to forget what each one means. If they're all the generic green X, you might be like, what did I mark here? Were we catching walleyes here? We were catching crappies? Is there a hazard in the water that I had marked out? So do your future self a favor. The more work you put in now, the more efficient you're going to be later on. So name your spot, then select your waypoint icon. So we have all kinds of different ones in here, whether it be where the cabin is, bluegill, blue catfish, lighthouse, perch, walleye. I'm going to select walleye right now. And then choose different colors as well. There's a lot of different color coding options for you. Some people will do their colors by year. So they might say, all right, in 2025, all of my, my good fishing spots, all of my waypoints, I'm going to mark and they're going to be blue, and hit save. So now I have this blue waypoint. Then in 2026, I'm going to make them all red. 2027, I'm going to make them all black, right? So that you can kind of see, hey, are things the same from year to year? How did things change? Maybe take an easy look of, man, I haven't fished this lake in 5 years. Maybe it's time to go back. That's one way to do it. You could do it based on species. That's the way I kind of like to do it. you could have all of your, you do a lot of walleye fishing, mark them one color. But then you also like to do a lot of catfishing, mark them a different color. That way, when you're kind of zoomed out and you're looking at all of your different waypoints, you can easily tell walleye spots, catfish spots, crappie spots, muskie spots, things like that. There's a million different ways that you can color code, your waypoints. One thing that I like to do as well is I will select one color. For me, it's red. And those are spots I want to try. Have not been there yet, but hey, lake data, says, hey, there's a high abundance of keeper walleye in here. Let's check it out sometime. So I'll mark it red. And maybe I go fishing there and I verify, yep, we caught our limit of nice eater size walleye. Then I'll change it to blue. Or maybe I go there and I strike out and I'm like, man, I tried everything I could, threw everything I could at them and didn't catch any fish. I'm not super ambitious to go back. Maybe I make it black and that's my, hey, do not return color or something like that. So whatever makes sense to you is a good way to go about it. Like I said, there's as many different color coding options as there are onX Fish users out there. So I did mention there was a couple different ways to mark a waypoint. What I do most of the time, if I go up to, we'll just go to another part of the lake, you can do what's called a long press. So if I just hold my finger down on the map, it's going to give me this option here. Tap add waypoint. That's going to put a waypoint on that spot there. And again, go through all the, the customization that I just did. I'm not going to do it right now in the sake of time, but trust me, you're going to want to do it. If you do want to delete a waypoint, it's simple to just tap on it. There you have your options down below. You can edit it. You can always edit a waypoint after the fact. You don't have to do it right away. I can add it to a folder. I can get driving directions to it. We'll do that in a bit. And I can hit delete if I scroll all the way over and get rid of that one. So let's talk about getting to the lake. I'm going to use Mille Lacs here. This was an access we always put on as a kid here. So let's say I want to get driving directions there. I put a waypoint on the parking lot of the access here. I tap on the waypoint. And if I scroll over and tap driving directions, that will then allow me to go to an outside mapping app. So in this case, Apple Maps or Google Maps, whichever you prefer. I typically use Google Maps. So if I tap on Google Maps, it's going to kick me over there. And you can see I'm in Missoula, Montana right now. So it's only about a 16.5-hour drive for me to get to the west side of Mille Lacs there. So I could be there, tomorrow sometime. So that'll kick you there so that you can get easy driving directions, right from the app. Let me get back in here. Couple other tools we'll mention very briefly. We are kind of running long here. The line distance tool, if you want to measure distance on the map, see, hey, how far out are we going to potentially be driving, on a big lake or something like that. So I'm going to draw a line on the axis here. I'm going to hit drop point. And then, I haven't fished Mille Lacs in so long, so I'm just going to pick a random spot. Let's say, we're going to go up here. I drop a point. As the crow flies, little over 5 miles. So if you just want to kind of get a rough estimate of how far you need to run out in your boat or how far of a drive it's going to be on your snowmobile or your pickup truck or something like that. Or if a buddy says, hey man, we were doing really good catching them about 3 miles straight east of the axis or whatever, you can use that to kind of get a sense of where you're going there. Just going to hit undo. I'm not going to save that line. The last thing I want to mention with waypoints is the ability to add a photo. So you can do that right from the tool menu here. You can hit add photo. What that will do is drop a waypoint on your location. and it will prompt you to add a photo to the waypoint. Again, I'm in Montana. It's not quite as clean as if I was in Minnesota or Wisconsin. Let me open this back up. I'm on a test account here, so we sometimes have some issues. So I've got this waypoint. I marked in Mille Lacs last time I was there, let's say, lots of smallmouth. It's fun to add photos to these. So if I go into my edit menu, click edit, hit the add button for photos. We all like taking pictures of our fish, right? What's that? Catch, photograph, release, CPR. It's fun to look back on that months later, years later, right? So add photos, it kind of becomes a bit of a journal once you've been at it for a little while. Again, your future self will thank you for putting that effort in. In addition to photos, you can also add notes. That can be super helpful if you put notes in date, time, maybe what the weather conditions were, what you were catching them on, what the pattern was, so that next time you're fishing that spot, you say, oh, that's right. Last time we were hammering them doing this. And look at the sweet fish Joel caught or something like that. So again, there's a lot to this and a lot you can put into it. I recommend playing around with it, trying it out. And, I will reiterate one more time, please customize your waypoints. Every time I see somebody's phone screen and it's got just a whole bunch of blank X's, it's like, man, do you know what all those are? Like do yourself a favor and at least put something in there, at least change the icon and the color and things like that. So with that, I think we'll toss it back over to Joel.
Great. Good reminders there. Thank you for sharing all that you did there. A lot of wonderful tips, especially on the waypoint side of things. I'm going to jump right back in where I was, and you'll notice all those little red dots. Sometimes it's annoying for people. That was based on our filter searches before, but a really quick way to remove all of that and to just start anew is to go back into that filter. I hit all, and then at the bottom, just click reset. Boom. As soon as I click reset, wipes the map clean. You're free to start a new filter session or peruse the map however you feel. But been getting a number of questions, speaking of perusing the map, of what these little white points are. And what they are is actual data from fishing hotspots maps. If you remember that company, a lot of these were paper maps that were in bait shops over the years that gave basic area insights when you clicked on individual points, like for Area 10 on Resort Flat on Mille Lacs. It just notes from mid-June to the end of July, mud flats such as Matt and Resort Blue Jug can provide anglers with lots of walleyes. These fish will be scattered. Drifting live bait rigs across the flats will help locate active fish. Very basic level information on community spots. But the neat part is if you've never been to Mille Lacs or you've never been to Pelican or any of these other lakes that have these small white or blue dots, however it looks on your screen, you can get some really great information. And here is another little secret. So I'm still clicked on that Area 10 from Mille Lacs. If you look on the bottom of the Area 10 card, I click fishery information, see more. You can get some really interesting stuff, seasonal movements on fish, kind of a description of the fishery, along with forage species, which is really cool because it'll call out specific lakes that have things like tullibes, cisco, spot-tailed shiners, trout perch, pearl dace. It can really help you match the hatch when it comes time to figuring out what baits you might select and the ways you might go about fishing those specific lakes. All right, so while we're looking around on the map, let's talk about how we can customize that, how we can look at base maps and layers to really benefit everything we're doing. Before I go into that real quick, Jack showed off a great way to do driving directions to a waypoint. You can do that by clicking on an access as well. I can't show it to you on the web version, but if you're in the app and you click on any of these accesses, it will show a driving directions section there for you too. That'll drop you off right at the access via either Google Maps or Apple Maps. So that's a really neat feature as well. All right, back to the base maps, back to the layers. If you look on the lower right-hand side of your screen, if you're on web or if you're on the app, it looks like a little layer sandwich here we've got. If you click on that icon, which is layers, it gives you a whole bunch of options both for base maps and for layers. This is where you're going to change the look and the feel of the map and customize it to your liking for every individual session. If you want to look at just aerial photos, you don't want anything else on that base map, specifically contour lines, you don't need to. You click on hybrid, you're going to see some contour lines. You click on topo, you're going to take away all of the aerial imagery and focus just on lakes. One of the benefits there is you can quickly see some of the lakes that have deeper depths very easily called out. They're much darker shades of blue when you click on that topo portion of the map. One thing about our contours, we currently have DNR level contours. These are not HD contours as are offered by some other apps out there. We're not here right now trying to compete with them current day and state. We have a different product. It's a product that helps you plan a day of fishing based on all the fisheries data and lots of other information that those apps don't. It helps you go and get to the lake through driving directions, through ways and access in. A little bit more on that later. And then once you're fishing on the lake, it's going to give you a lot of information on weather, precip, a whole host of other data that are going to help you get on the bite and stay on it. So just a couple to answer a couple questions that we got there in the chat. I like the hybrid setting for base maps. I really like being able to see some of the basic contours that we have. Again, not HD contours, but some of the basic ones that we have overlaid with the aerial photography. And what's really cool, especially for you ice anglers, is we can click on recent satellite imagery. And once you click on recent satellite imagery, and you'll look a little bit different on the app version, you'll go ahead and click on recent satellite imagery within base map. Again, I'm going to back out and show you one more time. So if you're looking at the map, go ahead and look lower right of your screen for this little sandwich. You can see my cursor here. My cursor is right there. I click on that layers and base maps button. And then I click either hybrid or aerial. Hybrid in this instance gives me the opportunity to see recent satellite data. And what's really neat is that based on my zoom level, it's going to show me some information that might be really beneficial to get on lakes like Mille Lacs. And I can go back in time and look at areas that formed and how it formed. We can go to all different lakes in both Minnesota and Wisconsin and check this out. Maybe we'll check out the bite on Upper Red right now. So if you look at different dates, you can see how the lake kind of froze up. Areas that had potential rough ice maybe didn't freeze up or form as well. You go back to that date range, you've got literally no ice. But once you get a full season in, you'll be able to see, I'm going all the way back to last year on Upper Red Lake, which was a really poor ice year. And you can see how the lake came online. These are ice roads. These are ice roads that were pushed out to some of the flats. Now, once we get more snow currently in Minnesota and Wisconsin, we'll be able to see these pop up as well. And you can actually see with incredible detail how all of the road systems interacted with one another. You can see vast parking areas on the ice. You can see areas where people pushed just about to no man's land where they maybe shouldn't have been on Upper Red. But you can also see areas of the lake that were relatively unpressured, mainly the northwestern portion of the upper eastern third of Upper Red Lake. So a pretty neat way to observe pressure from afar, again, through recent satellite imagery. I'm going to show you one more time. I back out, I click on the layers, I select either hybrid or aerial, and then I select recent satellite imagery. And at the bottom of the screen, can scroll through dates to see exactly what current state is as of 2 weeks ago. We've got information in there as recent as January 6th. So we just had a little data drop in there. Pretty neat to see. You can already see some of those ice roads maybe forming up already. Once the snow comes, you'll be able to see that in much greater detail. So that's kind of cool. All right. From there, I want to look at the other layers. So what's really neat about onX, and has always been cool about onX, is that if you're trying to hit backwoods lakes or places that just maybe are off the beaten path a touch, you can utilize this private lands layer to look for around all of the lakes interesting ways to access. So you can basically cruise around the lake and you can see all of the land ownership information. If there's a parcel that maybe you're interested in accessing from or want to learn more information about, you can click on that parcel and it says right there, it's Buena Vista State Forest ground. That is public property. You could access it there. This Lake Gull does have a public access, but maybe in some of the lakes you're looking at, there's going to be an option for accessing it from the backside. Maybe it'll be a lake that's completely private with no public access. However, like you see here, there's a way to access it as public land butts up against the shoreline of the lake. So pretty cool to see, and a pretty neat way to be able to figure out unique ways to get into new lakes and places you've never had an opportunity to fish before because you didn't know how to legally access it. So within those layers, there's all kinds of other options as well. One that I use quite a bit is I keep precipitation radar on at all times. I also keep on motorized trails and snowmobile trails. Those three are ones that I run all the time. The snowmobile trails here are listed in purple, and you can actually, once you zoom in tight, you can click on them and get more information. This is the North Country Trail, 154 miles long. In this instance, it's running through Buena Vista State Forest. But this is another way to get you into backwoods lakes with a snowmobile, a snow machine. Again, without this information, you're basically guessing. You're hoping and you're praying, and you really don't have a way to understand how you're legally accessing many of these water bodies, unless you're using something like onX Hunt. Obviously, onX Hunt doesn't have the same level of fisheries information in it, so it behooves you to sign up for onX Fish and try it out. Again, it's free. Okay, so we've covered base maps, we've covered layers. We talked a little bit about those fishing hotspots, points going on all around the map. I'd love to chat even more and ad nauseum go into tons of detail on the weather side of things. I'm just going to show you a really quick version of that. If you look, it'll be upper right part of your screen. If you're in Apple, if you're in the web portion, when you look over, it's got an icon for a little cloud with sun. Click on it in the weather, and you'll find the best weather app secret that maybe you didn't know about. If you're using Weather Underground, which I love, this is even better in my estimation because it gives you all of the pertinent information that you'd want to know as an angler right at your fingertips. The barometer is listed there, sunrise, sunset times. You've got a weekly forecast, which you can dole out fully weekly, and an hourly forecast with wind prediction, with prediction on barometric pressure. You've got the moon phases laid out, minors and majors listed if you're a musky person, or if that's something that you key in your walleye fishing to, along with the full lunar calendar for that week, or click on this button to get a full monthly lunar calendar. So for the price of admission, this alone, this weather portion is very interesting. And a key point to remember, it's the weather not from nearby observer stations, not in downtown Minneapolis, but it's the weather for the specific waypoint or area that you're zoomed in on the map. It basically triangulates and interpolates the weather at that location based on observer stations and forecasting. So it's a very, very powerful tool to be able to do things like you see here, to check out barometric pressure, look at moonrise, moonset, all that. So that's the weather portion of the app. Again, worth the price of admission in my estimation. So I'm going to take a break. I'm going to pause there. Jack, I'm going to call you back in. I know we had a lot of questions. I want to try to answer what we can in the time we have. I know it's slipping through the hourglass. So, and I also know you've got some giveaways too, Jack.
Yeah, first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to throw the giveaway link in the chat. And then what I'm also going to do is I'm going to turn the chat off just for a bit, or it's still there, but I'm not going to allow any new additions just because previous classes we posted that giveaway link and then it disappears. So giveaway link is at the bottom of the chat. All you have to do is click on that. We're giving away some hats just like Joel's wearing there. And all we're asking for is your name and your shipping information so that we can get those sent out. And again, I'll draw those winners tomorrow morning. I'll send everybody an email and we'll get those hats ordered up and shipped out to you. So let's do some questions. There's a few good ones. Actually, a lot of good ones in here. I pulled a few. So here was one, and I've noticed this as well on a lot of the lakes. There are T icons, like a capital T. What's that designating?
Great question. As you zoom into some of these lakes that have, the fishing hotspots data, you've got a lot more than just fishing hotspot stuff that shows up. In fact, you can pull in, I know of a great one down by Brainerd here. I'm just going to pull up the Pelican Lake. And when we've got our base maps set up to include hybrid and the contours show up, you'll see those things. You'll see T. That is actually vegetation. It's supposed to be, I believe, the top of a lily pad. So it should be emergent vegetation. Submergent vegetation is kind of these little bushy things. You've got sand, hazards, rocks, buoys, a number of different functional navigable type helps and aids for you as you're kind of cruising around these maps. So any of the fishing hotspots maps will have that updated vegetation and some substrate information in there for you.
Awesome. There was a question about the area insights information, as just asking, where does that come from? Is it user generated content? Does it come from pro staff? Where are we getting
Great
that?
question. Yep, that's from a company called Fishing Hotspots, and that data came from a collection of lots of different places. Fishing guides, resort owners, local pros, people that over the years had immense knowledge in these specific areas and were able to help this company create a guidebook of sorts. And again, these are community spots, but they are great, great starting locations and a wonderful piece of the puzzle to help you solve presentation, where you might fish, and general attributes about the seasonality of what it is that you're catching and where.
Another question from Carl. How often is the fishery info updated?
Great question. It's at least updated annually, And I believe they actually call out several times to the database. I know it's true for regulations, especially. This is in tune with the Minnesota DNR webpage and the Wisconsin DNR regulations as listed currently. So they're linked directly. Anytime there's an update on their page, it shows up on ours.
Awesome. Here's one I think you can probably show. I'm seeing some of it right now, but Jim asked, many large lakes have named reefs or other points. Does onX show that detail?
Yes, it does, especially on the fishing hotspots lakes. But even in places where it doesn't, a lot of times there is some basic information to help you out on those places. But again, these tend to be the larger lakes. These tend to be the areas that are more popularly fished. And typically they have fishing hotspots denotations on them. So anytime you see that, you're going to get a little bit of help. Islands are typically listed, if there is a name to the island, it's a big enough island, and it's named, are typically listed whether it's a fishing hotspots lake or not.
Awesome. Let's see here. No, I had one more. So somebody asking about the dock and restroom filters. Do those change seasonally at all? Like as, bathrooms, sometimes they get taken out at different times of year. Does that data change at all?
That data does not change. That is actually stuck directly to the public access portion of the database. It will not update it if they pull it away in the winter, unfortunately, but it's available to you to know that at least there's a chance or a hope in the event that it's still there. Another question. Go ahead.
I was going to say, somebody asked, to go between Minnesota and Wisconsin, do you have to log out and log back in or do anything different?
Absolutely not. It's really nice to be able to seamlessly move across the border at any point, run all the same searches, all of my same layer and base map settings stay consistent. There is no reset function. If you dwell on the border, you can go back and forth with ease, and you can run all of the same filters, all of the same searches. Speaking of searches, I do want to detail that really quickly. I want to get people in tune with this idea that it might be easier to search for something than it is to zoom and hunt and peck on the map for it. So let's just say Aiken, for example, north central Minnesota, a whole bunch of stuff. But if you use these buttons, it'll help you narrow it down. Aiken localities, well, it talks, if you want to zoom into Aiken County generally, we can do that. If you want to look at water body results that have Aiken, these are all of the lakes in Aiken County that have a named access as part of the search function. And the accesses themselves are called out if Aiken is in the name, like the Aiken Public Access on the Mississippi River, just north of Aiken. So one quick thing there. Another question I saw that I want to address really quickly. If you save waypoints on the app, they show up on the web map. If you save them on the web map, they show up on the app. It is completely seamless. There is no renaming, re-importing, exporting, none of that. It tracks you via your account.
Yep, and that's something I forgot to mention earlier when we were talking about waypoints. There was somebody who asked it earlier too. They're an Android user saying, hey, if I mark a bunch of waypoints on web now, when Android's available, will they show up? Yes, they will. So
100%.
you won't have to duplicate anything or redo anything. We talked about it a bit earlier, but we got a lot of questions on contour lines. So this person asked, can you please go over the accuracy of contour lines and plans to get them as accurate as possible? So maybe we should hit that one more time.
Sure. I'll say this. I'll say it on X. We're dedicated to making this app as good as it can be for anglers. And currently, we do not have HD contours. That's something we're not shy about saying because we know that especially in lakes out in the middle of nowhere where there's no 1 foot contours for any app, you're still going to have a better crack at seeing those contours because you've got basic 5 or 10 foot contours from the Department of Natural Resources. So that's kind of our standard option and offering currently. We're always making strides to make the app better whenever we can, and HD Contours is a part of that plan. So yeah, stay tuned, strap in. It's going to be a fun ride. onX is planning to develop a whole bunch of tools, other features, and more data for us to use and catch more fish with.
One thing I also neglected to talk about earlier was the tracker, partly because it's very difficult to show the tracker when you're sitting in an office in Montana. But a couple questions about using the tracker. Yeah, so if you go to your app, it's a mobile only option because you're probably not bringing your laptop with you out in the boat or out on the snowmobile when you're ice fishing. If you go to the lower right-hand corner of your app screen and tap the tracker button, you'll be able to start a track there. So you open up the tracker, you hit the start button, it will start counting down or counting up the time. And as you walk, it will lay a breadcrumb trail behind you, or as you drive or, take your boat or paddle your canoe or whatever. So you'll be able to see that breadcrumb trail of everywhere you went. And then when you're done, you can stop the track, hit save. It'll save some stats for you. It'll show you how many what your mileage was, how long it took you, what your speed was. So ice fishing season, I'm thinking I got a house set out on a lake. I run the track right out to it so that my buddies can find me, when I invite them out there. Open water season, see where I trolled, see everywhere I went, things like that. Joel, you probably have some other scenarios for using the track.
Yeah, the tracker, like Jack said, is very nice for ice fishing. We encounter a lot of issues on ice with ice safety. And I just over the holiday break used the tracker function on my iPhone to be able to go from Mille Lacs out of the west side, cross a big crack, and it tracked my way out so that after it got dark, I stayed for the night bite. I was able to navigate back in safely and cross that crack at the exact same place that I went out on it safely earlier in the day. That's a really critical feature. One more wrinkle to that, to even up the ante more, there is Apple CarPlay available for onX Fish. So now that we're starting to drive on lakes in Minnesota and in Wisconsin too, and throughout the ice belt, you can use Apple CarPlay to use the onX Fish app on the screen inside of your vehicle to drive out, start a track, develop a safe track onto the ice with your truck, see it all in your in-dash display. And then again, maybe after dark, trust that the track on the way back is the same way that you came out and approached the ice safely.
I think one more question here. Somebody's asking, when I use the filter, I see a red fish with a hook and a blue fish with a hook at the lakes. What is that?
Any of the bluefish hooks with the lake indicate that it's a lake that has survey information on it. If you click on this one nearby, there's no blue hook on it. There's no survey information available. So that's a quick and easy way. I know there was a number of questions in Wisconsin. How come all of my crappie lakes don't have fisheries data? Unfortunately, we can't control where the Department of Natural Resource folks go out and do their fisheries surveys. We do know, though, that they intend to survey most of the popular lakes that they can, especially the ones with public accesses. So it's not a question of why won't we show it to you? It's more a question of we don't have it to show it to you.
And to add on to that, guys, he was talking about, why is it sometimes blue? Why is it sometimes red? I think he was talking about earlier when you were using some of the filtering, those red
Correct.
ones were showing, if you were filtering for crappie lakes, then it was showing lakes that had crappies in them. There you go there. So
yeah, correct.
hope
Yeah,
that answered
anytime
your
you see a
question
red
there.
dot, it's when your filter has been satisfied. You can see a lake that you've selected based on your filter.
Todd asked if you could show weather info one more time. Could you just show
Yep.
how to access that one more time, Joel?
Absolutely. If you're in the web version, lower right-hand side, it's got a little cloud with a sun poking out of there. If you're in the app version, it's upper right-hand. It's just the icon. It doesn't say weather. It's just a little cloud that you click on. And once you click on that, it pulls up the full card. Again, for that crosshairs area that you're centered on, it gives you the exact weather for that area. Wind forecasts, all this information is just extremely valuable. I think it's one of the best kept secrets in both the Hunt app and the Fish app.
Right. Well, we've got more questions coming in on, I think we could probably sit here all day and answer questions, but we are a bit over our hour time. So I do want to mention, should have mentioned it at the top. If anybody does have questions, we have a phenomenal customer support team that you can send an email to. The email is help@onxmaps.com. Obviously, I'm biased. They're phenomenal. If you have just a simple question of how do I do XYZ, or I need help resetting a password or something like that, they're fantastic. They try to answer every email within a 24 business hours. So if you send us an email, again, it's help@onxmaps.com. You can send us an email and they will get back to you. If you send it tonight, you can expect an answer sometime tomorrow. So give those folks a shout. They're all, US based. So they'll take care of whatever question you have.
Yeah, and like Jack was saying, if you have other feedback you want to provide for us, you can click on that button that says onX Fish Feedback. Give feedback. If you're in the web version or in the app, there's a feedback button. We'd love to hear from you. Give us a rating. Let us know what is awesome. Let us know what's frustrating to you. This isn't perfect. This is a work in progress, but we're pretty proud and pleased with how it's going. So anything you can offer us will help us make it even better.
Awesome. Well, with that, I think we will wrap it up for the evening. We do have another onX Fish 101 coming up in February. So keep an eye out for that one. If you'd like to come back, I'm sure we'll have some changes to the app. We're always adding new stuff, so it's ever changing. So we'll talk about those then. Or if you have a buddy that's interested, you can point them our direction and check out that class next month. And just want to thank everybody again for joining us and learning more about onX Fish. And Joel, thanks, and hope everybody has a good night.
Thank you.